Hello people, so since there is no One Piece chapter this week, I'm going to be talking about the three great powers of the One Piece world. Now, we've actually known about these powers for a while now, but they were initially introduced as three back in Water 7 by Garp. Those three world powers are, of course, number 1, the Marines, number 2, the Shichibukai, and number 3, the Yonko. Now, by the end of this video, I will also be addressing a pretty normal question to have, which is, why does the government even recognize the Yonko in the first place? Like, why even have these four monstrosities out there at sea in the New World called the Yonko, and why do they even get recognized by the government in the first place? Like, what does the government even have to gain from a Yonko established system? More on that later, but before that, let's get into the Marines first. So from this quote right here, which was stated in Marineford, we know that the Marines have been around as an established power for well over 100 years, okay? Now, this probably means that at one point, the pirates in general, were so out of control that the rulers at the top felt threatened and decided to recruit and establish the Marines as a structural entity to sort of like ensure their protection. And even till this day, that seems to be the case, where in which the Marines are essentially this giant military mechanism that is there to enforce the rules and the desires and the wishes of the people at the top. Now, I'm only saying this because throughout the story of One Piece, the Celestial Dragons have clearly shown us with different examples that they really only care about themselves and those of royal blood. Again, even though in theory the Marines are supposed to be there to protect the people, they were probably formed in the first place to protect those at the top. Now, because the world of One Piece is so vast, even the Marines can't control all of it. They can't influence all of it. We know this because if that were the case, if the Marines could really control all of the world and have enough power to rule it all, there would be absolutely no point in having three powers in the first place. Now, after the Marineford War arc, we got a little bit of a brief discussion with the Gorosei, the 5 elders, who are like obviously top government officials, and one of them was saying how he felt that now, after the war, the balance was off when it came to these three powers. Because at that point in time, not only had they lost 3 of the Shichibukai, Jinbei, Moria, and Blackbeard, but they had also witnessed the death of a Yonko, Whitebeard. So that obviously had the effect of destabilizing this so-called balance. Now, in order for this balance to be maintained, I'm pretty sure we can infer that the government is pretty much counting on a couple of things. All right, the first one is this: all powers must live up to their title. If you don't have enough strength to hold on to the title that is given to you, you get kicked out. You lose your spot, essentially. And we've seen this happen before in the series. It happened with Crocodile, it happened with Moria, happened with Doflamingo. The only exception to this rule, I think, happens to be Buggy, and I'll talk a little bit about why I think that is later on. Now, the second condition for this balance to be maintained is that the Shichibukai should technically, in theory, value their status enough to not abuse their power and stay in line within their privileges. Okay, now this requirement has obviously also been violated before, from very early on in the series, where Crocodile and Doflamingo were abusing their title to rule over their territories in a very tyrannical fashion, okay, and to make civilians miserable. Blackbeard and Boa Hancock also abused their title by taking advantage of their security clearance in Impel Down to infiltrate it with hidden agendas. And then they also ended up attacking submarines in the Marineford War arc. So that's the second condition. The third condition, all right, is that the government is counting on the Yonko not forming alliances with each other. If a Yonko allied himself or herself with another Yonko, that would be catastrophic for the government. It would just be terrible, okay? Upset everything. Now, if you were to assign a value or an energy charge to each of these three powers, you would probably end up with like a triangle that says that either the Marines or the Yonko are positively or negatively charged. So let's pretend that the Yonko in this case are negatively charged, the Marines are positively charged, but the Shichibukai undoubtedly have to be the neutral charge in all of this. And it's that level of neutrality that really ends up giving the title of Shichibukai its power. Because if you think about it, they could literally align themselves with whoever they think is winning at the time. If you happen to hold the title of a Shichibukai and you play your cards right, you could technically operate in the world of One Piece with the guaranteed protection of a Yonko and the Marines. Not only that, but they also get that sweet, sweet security clearance so that they could go and access Marine facilities whenever they please. That's also one of the reasons for why we don't have Shichibukai level in the series. I mean, we have Admiral and Yonko level, but there's no such thing as Shichibukai level because their power is just kind of like all over the place, and it varies a lot. From this picture right here, we know that Doflamingo was probably at around Yonko commander level. Moria got defeated by pre-time skip Luffy. We know that Jinbei fought Ace to a standstill. But overall, I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that Mihawk and Teach are probably the strongest ones in this roster, the way it was before. I don't want to neglect or ignore Kuma because his Devil Fruit is pretty broken. I mean, everybody in this roster has something to offer. But if I were to like make a bet, it'd be with Mihawk and Teach. Now, you could say that Blackbeard went on to become a Yonko, but the point that I'm trying to make is that at one point, before Teach became a Shichibukai, Crocodile was part of these 7. And so that pretty much confirms that from a power scaling perspective, despite their ridiculous amount of freedom and autonomy, the Shichibukai should technically be the weakest of the 3 powers. Because if that's not the case, then that would mean that all of these 7 people, alright, at any point in time should be able to equal the power of all 4 Yonko and the combined forces of all of the Marines. And I just don't think that's the case. As much as I love Mihawk, unless he has like some Superman level feats that we haven't seen. And we know that, back in the day he used to spar with Shanks, so he could go head to head with a Yonko or somebody who's now a Yonko. So again, very admirable feat. He's the strongest swordsman in the world. So that's not something to just like bat an eye over. But I don't think the 7 of these guys would be able to take on all 4 Yonko and the Marines. Again, if you just want to do a thought experiment, substitute Blackbeard with Crocodile and tell me if you think that group would be able to hold a candle against the other 2 powers. Okay. Again, the power of the Shichibukai is about them remaining as neutral as possible, and it's mainly political. So it's about that political neutrality in the world of One Piece. That's their biggest strength, at least as a group. Now, on paper, the whole point of having the Shichibukai be part of this triangle, be a power in the first place, is that they technically shouldn't even have to compete with the other 2, but instead be there and provide aid for the Marines whenever they see fit. And we saw this in Marineford when they were called up. They were called up to help them fight Whitebeard, except that actually didn't happen. So here's the thing, because in theory, I guess you can make the argument that the Marines and the Shichibukai together would kind of like be enough to fight the Yonko, except whenever the Shichibukai are called, they never really do their job as a group. They just do whatever they want. Jinbei refused to fight Whitebeard, okay? Doflamingo was like fighting off, like he was trying to like pick a fight with Crocodile. Crocodile, by the way, wanted to kill Whitebeard, so how does that make sense? Boa Hancock was attacking Marines. I'm also pretty confident in saying that if Kaido had shown up during the war, both Moria and Doflamingo would be bending over backwards for him. Now, to be fair, Dofi did kind of stop Jozu a little bit there with his strings, and Mihawk did engage in combat against Vista during the war, but the moment Mihawk saw Shanks show up, he's like, I'm done, I agreed to fight Whitebeard, I'm not fighting Shanks, I'm done, I'm going home. So imagine a scenario where the Marines declare war against Shanks, then Mihawk would have probably refused to show up. And so in that case, Mihawk would have been the Jinbei of Marineford, where Jinbei was basically told, like, no, you have to help us when we call you. But the main point here is that if you look at this from an objective perspective, you'll realize that the Shichibukai being part of the 3 world powers, the 3 great powers of the One Piece world, hasn't really worked. And this goes into Fujitora's argument and Fujitora's goal of wanting to completely dismantle the Shichibukai system and just get rid of it, which really wouldn't be that big of a deal, because when you have a triangle with a positive charge, a negative charge, and a neutral charge, if you remove the neutral charge from the triangle, you're just left with a negative and a positive charge. So you would hope that those 2 would be enough to balance each other out. So let's think about that scenario for a little bit. Imagine that there's only the Yonko and the Marines, and that's it. Because I'm pretty sure that Oda is foreshadowing the elimination of the Shichibukai system via Fujitora's words. Have you ever thought about what the government has to gain from even recognizing the Yonko in the first place? Like, what do they have to gain from saying, yeah, those 4 guys are the Yonko, alright? What's in it for them? We know what's in it for them when it comes to the Shichibukai, because they have a deal with them. But what's in it for them when it comes to the Yonko? The joke answer is that it all goes back and starts with Buggy. Buggy was made a Shichibukai, I think, not just because of the amount of men that he was leading, but also because the Marines saw that he was interacting with Shanks during the war. So Shanks was a Yonko. We know that Shanks had ties to Roger. He was aboard his ship, and so was Buggy. So they gave that title to Buggy. Now, here's the thing. Why did Sengoku, during the war, say, all right, Shanks, you showed up out of respect for you. Since I respect you, we're going to end this right now. What's up with that? What's up with a fleet admiral, the head of the Marines, bowing to the will and request of a Yonko? Because even if he were to respect Shanks, and by all means, that's okay. He can respect Shanks. But Shanks, at the end of the day, is still a pirate. So why is Sengoku doing what a pirate is telling him to do? There's 3 reasons for that. Number 1, and this is the most obvious one, is that had they confronted Shanks, had they engaged in battle with another Yonko, a second Yonko during the war, there'd be more casualties, like Kobe was saying, and that would set things like even more off balance than they were already. Number 2 is that the Marines, more so than the pirates, really benefit from having a good, clean public image. A lot of the power that the Marines have over the One Piece world stems from the public, normal civilians, thinking that the Marines are the good guys, even though there's been a lot of corruption and abuse of power and all that stuff. But the government has tried to hide that over the years. For a clear example of this, look no further than the massacre of the people of Ohara. So the government was so intimidated by these scholars because they had the ability to read the poneglyphs that they decided to wipe everybody out. And of course they succeeded, with the exception of Robin. That actually connects to my third and final point about why it is that the Marines need the Yonko. And that is because the Marines, by the way, there's a lot of evidence for this. The Marines are terrified of somebody else becoming the second king of the pirates. This was pretty much made clear during Whitebeard's final words when he said, Sengoku, you and the world government. Look at what he's saying. He says, the Marines and the world government are afraid of the day when somebody finds that treasure. When somebody finds the One Piece, this established so-called order that you value so much is going to come crashing down like crazy. Now, to be fair to Sengoku, he actually has a reason to be concerned because we've already seen that before Roger died, he initially started this brand new wave, this brand new era of piracy. Like he basically enabled and motivated people to become pirates with his last words. So if there's a second king of the pirates, like you can imagine, like for the Marines, whose apparent mission is to keep order by fighting pirates, it's going to be that much more difficult to do. So the Marines, and therefore the government, does not want another person to become the second king of the pirates. While at the same time, they also want to keep their hands clean in the process to avoid suspicion. So what do? Well, you rely on the top tier pirates keeping the weaker pirates in check. You rely on the Yonko stopping other pirates from reaching Raftel. Now, during the Whitebeard days, the government actually had a really good thing going because Whitebeard had actually said that it was not his goal to get to the One Piece. He didn't care about that treasure. So that was a good thing because it maintained the balance. Now we have, I think it's 2 Yonko. Like Big Mom wants to be king of the pirates, but she can't read the poneglyph, so she's kind of like trapped in that sense. And even if she could read her own road poneglyph, at some point in time she would still need to end up confronting Kaido because Kaido also has a road poneglyph. So you see how that works? How even within the Yonko, the structure of these 4 people, there's still like this system of checks and balances where in which if one wants to get out of line or one wants to be king, the other 3 would kind of like interfere with that process. The same thing goes with Teach, Blackbeard. We know that he's a Yonko and he wants to reach Raftel, but I think, in fact, after the war, there's a conversation between the Gorosei, and the Gorosei actually speculate about this. They say, you know, this Teach guy who ate 2 devil fruits is going to be a problem. But then one of the other elders says, well, hold on. There's still forces in this world that could actually stop them, like the Yonko. So ultimately, that is why the world government needs the Yonko. They depend and count on their greed and an independent will as pirates to stop other pirates. So they don't really go out of their way to engage in battle or start conflicts with the Yonko. The exception obviously being when the Marines fought Whitebeard, but that is because of Ace, because Ace, as you know, is the direct descendant of Gold D. Roger. So, you know, because Ace was the son of the king of the pirates, the Marines and therefore the government considered that to be that much big of a threat that they decided, screw this, we have to risk it because, again, We cannot let somebody else enable a more powerful contemporary wave of piracy. And that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked and appreciated the video, you know what to do. I'm not even going to tell you. Thank you again. Subscribe for more One Piece related content, chapter reviews, and discussions like these whenever there is no chapter or whenever I have time. Thanks a bunch. Catch you later. Bye.